Welcome, everyone, to the Better Love Movement podcast, where you will finally learn how to intentionally do dating and relationships right. My name is Anita Stoudemire, and I am a licensed professional therapist and your personal love mentor. I've worked with thousands of singles and couples, giving them the skills needed to attract and keep the amazing love they desire. It is my heart's work to help people to get the skills needed to not only become the very best versions of themselves, but to help them grow and evolve emotionally and relationally. You can absolutely have the romantic relationship of your dreams. Come and let me show you how. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Better Love Movement podcast. This is episode number 168, and it is entitled Getting on the Same Page with Your Partner About Money. So today I am talking to Chris and Ericka Young of the For Better and Worth podcast. Let me tell you a little bit about the Youngs. So Chris has mastered the art of the deal as a business and sales professional for 20 plus years. Ericka has helped 500 plus clients and various corporate audiences get real and naked with money for 18 years. Together, they have leveraged this corporate and real world experience for their own bottom line. Most importantly, Chris and Ericka have been married for nearly 25 years. They both grew up in single parent households and didn't have a lot of excess money to go around. As a result, they wanted to provide a more stable foundation for their two daughters. Chris and Ericka have successfully become millionaires, huge, helped one daughter graduate from college debt-free, and the other one is on her way. Through their podcast, For Better and Worth, they are here to show you that a healthy net worth and a happy, lasting relationship is possible. Welcome, Chris and Ericka.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us here.
All right. So let's talk money. I can't believe I've been doing this podcast for 3 years, and I talk to folks all the time about dating and relationship issues, but I've never had a guest on to talk about how couples should discuss their finances. So this is a first. Please tell my listeners more about the two of you and your podcast, For Better and Worth.
Yes.
Well, we're originally from the Michigan, Detroit area, and we met when we were in our early 20s and decided that we wanted to sync up and create something lifelong. And so
he couldn't take his eyes off of me. Let's just be clear. That's what happened.
That's for sure. And so Ericka and I got married, and we celebrate 25 years this year. And so we have been on this financial journey together for quite a while. You know, we early on in our relationship, I'd say, about a year into it, we really drilled down and started focusing on getting out of debt and making that a priority for us, because we wanted to create something that was very different than what we grew up with. And for us, that was changing our generational tree. And with that, we just, started there and just really began to learn and dig in and do the things that really were able to set us up to get to where we are today.
Yeah. And for context, I'll add that we had $60,000 in debt when we connected and tied the knot. And then when we had 2 kids, that increased our debt load because we felt like we needed safer, reliable vehicles. And so we got those vehicles, and that total debt amount went to $90,000. And so I think a lot of the times people think, they've been doing all right their entire relationship, or they started off with a head start. No. We started off in the hole.
Not at all.
And we had to climb our way out of it and figure out the ways to do that would help us to communicate well in the journey, enjoy the journey, and not feel deprived in trying to get out of debt. And then also to really go beyond the debt and to create some level of wealth that we can pass on, but also that we can live on, in our later years when we want to step away from working. So I think that for context, a lot of folks need to know that the debt wasn't tiny. It wasn't like $10,000. It was substantial, and it was a lot to carry.
And as far as the podcast, it really stemmed from the passion that Ericka and I both had, because once we got out of debt, Ericka left her traditional corporate job, and she started to do, financial coaching, and, we were still aligned. She was doing that work full time, but we were on the same page as it relates to money and investing and those things. And I think the podcast really comes out of, our experiences as well as our passion to want to do something together. And so we felt that now was the appropriate time to launch For Better and Worth. And we really do believe that you don't have to sacrifice. You shouldn't have to sacrifice, because the vows when you get married says for better or worse, for richer or poor. And we felt like, look, why do you have to choose? And so we felt like this was a perfect opportunity to really leverage the experiences that we've had over these years and the successes that we've been able to create to share that with a wider and a larger audience. So that's what brings us here with the For Better and Worth podcast today.
All right. Well, I can tell you this, couples need it, because we know statistically that money is one of the huge issues why marriages don't make it. Two people coming together and them having very different money stories or history with money. I usually find in my therapy practice that there's a saver and a spender, and I try to identify who each person is. And I give, I guess, the best guidance I can based on my experience and having worked with like accountants and financial management companies. I give a premarital couple the best advice that I can. But I'm no money management guru, but yeah, it's something that has to be addressed. Things like credit. I've had couples come in where one person didn't want to use credit and the other person did. So those are big areas of contention if we don't get on the same page. So
Yeah. And I'll add too, I feel like with savers and spenders, like we're all necessary. It is important that people don't think that their partner is wrong for being the way that they are when they come to the money table, right? So if you have two spenders, then you might not save any money, right? And you might not have a future that you can be proud of. And if you have two savers, then you might not have any fun. So it's good to have a spender there so that you can kind of enjoy the fruit of your labor. And so I think that we have to, the biggest thing that I could tell couples right now, be it in dating or in a marital relationship, is appreciate what you both bring to the table, so that you have that baseline of understanding of one another. Because if you feel that someone is wrong for the way that they show up, then they'll never be able to truly add the value that I believe that they can provide.
And we've exchanged those hats over the years.
Yeah.
Ericka was the saver, I was the spender, and then I became the saver and she became the spender. And we kind of go back and forth. And at some point we're both savers, and then there's moments in time when we're both spenders. But I think we strike a fine balance between those things. We're never at the same time doing the same thing. We kind of go back and forth. But I think you have to know how you operate as a couple. And, the one thing I've learned is that people just want to be heard. And if you're a spender, listen to what the saver is saying. And if you're a saver, listen to what the spender is saying. And when they're heard, you'll find those points of agreement that will allow you to function better as a couple.
Yep.
Okay. Sounds good. So what can couples do to get on? I'm sorry. That's my question 3. Let's start again. I knew I was ahead of myself. When you think about some of the couples that you have worked with regarding finances, what are some of the most common things you see that they have problems or issues around?
Typically, what I have seen is that one partner is trying to fix the other. That they think that one of them only has all of the issues and challenges, and it requires some level of intervention from a third party. And the truth is that everybody needs to know what's going on, and we need to know what the pitfalls are. We need to understand where you're getting stuck. It is not a finger pointing game. So I think that if we can take off our judgmental attitudes and take the hat off that is causing us to only see their flaws and not our own, then we actually can have a basis for, building something financially. And so none of us is perfect. Like if we can just take that on and say, we're not going to do it perfectly. I'm not perfect. My spouse or partner is not perfect. And we're going to go in this with an attitude of let's figure it out together and let's, come to the table with a bit of humility. And honor and respect this person who we say that we love and not allow the money to dictate how we respond. I think that is really a good, healthy way to start. Breaking down some of those needs to be right can be challenging. And in my coaching work, I have really tried very hard to remain unbiased. And when there is extra help needed, make sure that they're going to get marital counsel or to talk to a tax professional or a legal representative if they're needing that additional help. I think sometimes we can confuse what the true issue is. And if I can weed through by understanding what's really at play here, then I can really help them best. And so, 18 years of helping couples with their money has helped me to weed out what I'm not going to walk into. I'm not going to become a counselor, but I can help you figure out what's really at play.
Look, as soon as you said one is a fixture, I was like, ooh, don't be trying to fix me. And I know that is the mindset that a lot of people take in relationships is like, oh, you got all the answers now. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're going to solve the problems that I bring to the table.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what I said previously. You're not hearing that person. Right. And when you're not hearing that person and you are pointing that finger, now, that creates contention. And it's that contention that derails relationships and that creates arguments and choke points from making progress. Yeah. And so,
yeah.
Ooh, as soon as I heard it, I was like, oof.
It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good if someone's trying to fix you because it's just simply not possible. Accept them for who they are and value what they bring to the table. We all are necessary.
For sure. And I know one of the things that I encourage my couples in couples counseling is to be curious. Curious. So let's say I'm the saver and my husband's the spender. I would say, okay, I see you want to make this big purchase. Tell me what this means to you. Mm-hmm. Tell me why this is important to you. Yeah. I think that's, if we just are curious, that might help, to understand our partner or if they want to save, they don't want to spend that money. Yeah. Tell me why this is important to you. Tell me why it's important that we save this money. So absolutely. Getting curious is what I encourage that couples do instead of going in hot like, I can't believe you spent that. I can't believe it. Like,
that's a good practice. I feel like curiosity is a great word. Curiosity as opposed to accusatory behavior. Yep. I love questions or statements like, tell me more about that, or how does that make you feel, or what's really going on here, or I missed that. Can you repeat it? Or am I getting this right? And then repeat their words. And if we can start off, like you said, with curiosity, it just lays a foundation for everybody to feel heard.
I think you got to be okay too with the answer that you get.
Oh, that part.
Because I recall a couple situations in our lives where I was adamant about saving. And Ericka would ask, well, why are we saving so much money? Or what are we doing with this money? And I was like, I don't know. I just know right now that we're supposed to save. And if we go back and we look at those instances when I was just adamant about like saving everything, there came things that occurred that we needed that money. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, look, I don't know what your audience is, but I just know the Lord was working in me.
Yes. Yeah.
And so there was something that was just leading me to save in that way. And because we have the relationship that we have, she just deferred, to the leadership that I was showing at that time. And when the situation manifested and it revealed that, man, we really needed like every dollar of that money we saved, it turned out to be, okay, I'm glad you pushed us to save.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say you got to be okay with the answer that you get, because they may know, but then they may not be clear 100%. But they just may think this is something that we need to do, and you never know what comes up in the future. And it could set you up for success, or it could set you up for failure.
And that's the key. So what you were really saying was this can set us up for success. And I didn't see a drawback to hitching on to that bandwagon. If it were something that was financially detrimental, then that might have been a different story. But I think the great part about it is that I did see the benefit. I just didn't understand the why. And that might be the case for people where when they're not in agreement or they just don't understand. As long as it's not detrimental, why are we arguing about it? And a lot of times it's really because we want to be right, or we want to have the answer. We wish it was our idea. You know what I mean? And if we can let go of that baggage, then we can just say, all right, he means no harm. Like saving, there's nothing bad about saving, right? There's nothing bad about having more money. So this is an easy way to say,
Right.
let's make sure that this happens. And if I care about him, then I care about what matters to him. And so he was very adamant, and I realized how important that was. And I said, okay, me helping to make this happen is settling something in his heart, which helps me as well. And so if we're not thinking only of ourselves, then we can move forward. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, there has to be a level of trust there.
Yeah.
Trust is the foundation. And so, as Chris said, intuitively, he just felt like that was the right thing to do. And so that was one of those situations where you had to trust that.
Mm-hmm.
So trust is huge in a relationship, period, but definitely when we're talking about money.
Yeah.
We have to trust each other. So, yeah, sounds like, you all do. So that's a good thing. And that's a lesson here that folks can take away is you've got to have that trust.
Yeah. And I think at that point, we probably had a solid 10, 12 years under our belt. And so he had proven that, I mean,
there was history.
Yeah,
There was history that played out at that point.
Yeah, we proved to each other that we were trustworthy. And so we were never going to be doing anything behind our back. It wasn't like he was having a savings account that I couldn't see. I saw it growing, right? So that's the other thing is that we're not keeping secrets.
And some people forget that marriage is about giving up your right to be right.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to be right, but it's really about not me being right. It's about giving up my right to be right in order to embrace, the relationship. And if people approach things in that manner, they'll get even greater outcomes.
Right. Agreed. And one of the things that I'm teaching my couples all the time, whether they're in a Christian counseling environment, because I can do that, or I can do a secular counseling environment. But in my mind, I teach them similar principles, which is, two are becoming one. And so I want you to move in a way that's best for the relationship. Okay?
Yeah.
Not just you, the relationship. What works
That's
best
right.
for the relationship, right? So yes, definitely when it comes to your money, that's something I want people to think about, that it's not just, two separate people. You're coming together and you're doing what's best for the relationship. So I get it. So what can couples do to get on one accord when it comes to their finances?
I think the first thing is to dream. I think we get too much in the numbers, we get too much in the I wants, and we get too much into these individual pursuits. And I think if we can sit and dream and think about what it is we want in the future together as a team, as a unit, as a unified body, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What aspirations do you have? Where do you want to be in your career? How much money do you want in savings? It's for some people, it's simply being a homeowner because their family, they had never been a homeowner before, right? And so dream, just sit back, don't get on the computer, don't crunch numbers, don't add up the debt yet. Just sit back, close your eyes, hold hands even sometimes, and just talk about what it is that you want to see. That's the fun part. Let's find alignment in the fun stuff first, and then introduce the how, which would include numbers. And I think that will really help with those who aren't, naturally geared towards looking at numbers, and it just keeps people from pushing away the budget or pushing away the tracking systems and all of that, where we can really geek out on some of that stuff. And though I love it, I just think that sometimes in a couple's relationship, that may not be the place to start. Let's start with finding where we find alignment and what makes us light up inside so that we can, get on the same page there first.
Well, it may sound a little cliche, the answer I'm going to give you, but I really think one of the things that couples can do to get on the same page is to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And I say it's cliche because people say, oh, relationships require good communication, but you know what bad communication looks like.
Yeah.
And if you cannot communicate effectively, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, if you're not allowing the other person to state their point and for them to be heard, you'll never have good communication. And that's one thing about Ericka and I seek her input. I ask for her input. I want to know her point of view and her perspective, because I have a definitive way of seeing and doing things, but she has a definitively different way of seeing and doing things. And that can allow me to take account for blind spots that I might have by listening to her. And so I think people have to have good and effective communication, because you can get a much clearer picture and you can put a better picture together that can allow you to make better, more sustained decisions and judgments. So I think good communication is really essential to getting on the same page, especially when it comes to money.
Yeah. And I would even add too that communication can be a simple 10-minute conversation, right? So
Yeah, don't make it War and Peace.
please, no, we don't want it to be a, 3-hour long, dissertation about, we just really want maybe 10 minutes. In dating, what do you think about tipping, or just watch behaviors, right? Or were you taught anything about money when you were coming up, or things like that, where you can just have a moment. It doesn't all have to be directly related to numbers, but it needs to be in an effort to understand your partner better and to help make sure that the conversations are easier, right? So you can develop the habit of good and effective communication if you make it routine and not, okay, right now, the first time in 30 days, we're going to have all these money conversations. No, let's just make it a daily thing. So today, I'm curious about this, just like you said, Anita, and, or let me just ask this question real quick, or I saw this happen and I'm curious, just even watching a show, sometimes we'll pause a show and we'll ask each other a question about it. And that just makes it natural and normal versus this big, hairy thing that we're going to tackle. No, just find ways to make it a normal part of your day.
For sure. And I know for certain that everyone has a story. They have a story around money. And they got that from their family of origin. So we come from our family of origin. I know for me personally, I did not learn about investing. I did not learn about credit. Those were not things that I came out of my family of origin with that information. And I learned that information. I learned a whole lot of things, But yeah, we kind of need to know people's story and what they're coming to us with from their family of origin. And like
Absolutely.
you said, making that just a comfortable conversation, not a, oh, that's so awful conversation, but just, oh, really? Okay. And so
Yeah.
you've learned more about that now, that's it. That's it. Because a lot of people have shame around money. There's a lot of shame around money or the lack of money. A lot. I see
Absolutely.
that a lot, in my practice is people have shame around money. Either they didn't have enough of it, and so now in their adulthood, they don't want to deprive themselves. Oh, I didn't get this for Christmas, and I didn't have that. And so now, as an adult, I'm not going to deprive myself. I'm going to get everything I want. Like, those are important things to, try to uncover about your partner. And then you have people that maybe they did have plenty of money. And so, they were like, oh, that wasn't an issue for me. I never had an issue around money like that. But like you said, one is not worse than the other. We're not saying that. We're just trying to learn about our person and their story when it comes to
Yeah.
money.
There can be pros and cons that come from each of those scenarios.
Yep.
And that's the interesting thing. You can have not enough money and gain some very good financial management skills, or you can have an abundance of money and acquire some very poor financial management skills. And so I think when you're talking about learning, the person's background, it's definitely beneficial.
Oh yeah.
And when you talk about relationships, Erica and I always say this. We say same team.
Yeah.
We're on the same team.
One band, one sound.
Right. And when people are talking about money, you get into this oppositional stance where we're on separate teams. Well, no, do we have one saving, one account? Yes. Are we trying to move forward and progress together? Yes. Are we trying to build a future that looks better than our past? Yes. And so people need to remember you're on the same team. And if they do that, they'll be setting themselves up for a greater level of success right out the gates.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think that we can easily forget when we're talking about the dollars and cents, especially we get very protective of our income and squirrely about how much we're making. And I have found myself in this situation as well, where I'm insecure at moments in my business where it hasn't been as great as other times in my business. And it shows up in your behavior and in how you approach, conversations. And so you're not by yourself. I do this for work and it shows up for me. And so I think that we can't, assume that because of our upbringing that either we're immune because we had a lot of money or that, it mattered so much because we didn't have a lot. I mean, I think we need to just take it for what it is. And our school systems haven't given us any head starts either. I mean, they're not teaching, this kind of stuff. Yeah, we're teaching our kids how to go out maybe and make money or how to learn, but we're not showing them the tools in order to keep the money, grow the money when you actually have it and how to manage it well. So I just think it's important that we, build a solid foundation of allowing it to be a natural part of conversation and less taboo.
See, that's music to my ears, especially in our community. Like that, these are the conversations. So
Yeah.
my children turned 18. They all turned 18. They all got an investment account. They
Hmm.
all have money directly deposited into their investment account. I said, you know
Yep.
what? You gonna know about credit. You gonna know about investing. You gonna know about taxes. I definitely, based on my background, made sure
Right.
that my three were going to do things differently. And I
There
told
you
them, I
go.
said, y'all are 18. Well, they're 20. The youngest two are 20, and I have a 23-year-old. But when they were 18, I said, $10 a month. You're going to put $10 a
Mhm.
month in this forever. Forever. And when you're, my age, 65 and, up there, you're going to be glad you did. You're going to be
Yep.
glad you did. But
Absolutely.
it's money you're not even going to think about. You're not even going to, if you want to put more, great. But just that alone, starting that at 18, it's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah.
So
It's like
yes,
developing muscle.
right,
Yeah.
right,
You got to
right.
work it. You got to work it and be consistent.
Yeah, and I think
Yep.
this year is the first year for parents who are saving for college and
Mhm.
529s. This year is the first year that you can convert 529 savings into a Roth IRA in the name of your kid. And
Ooh.
so I even told Erica, I was like, wow, we've saved, but our kids have been, very blessed. They got scholarships. Said
Mhm.
maybe we just, shift some of that money into a Roth. And so now we're showing them about, tax deferred and tax free, and so they understand that because we've been very intentional about trying to give them those building blocks, those fundamentals, so that when they get out into the world, it's not the first time they hear it. It's not the
Right.
first time they
Sure.
experience it.
For
Because
sure.
when we got married, we had to learn about accounting, we had to learn about investing, and we were meeting with insurance people and lawyers. We were doing all of these things. And so, when you know better, you can do better. And
That's
that's
right.
what is imperative upon us and our community to make sure that we are not keeping this information in a vacuum, but
Hmm.
we're on, YouTube or we're on, behind microphones and we're sharing this to broader audiences. And it's one of those things. Now, when you hear it and what you do with it, now it's up to you
That's
because the
right.
information is out there and available.
Right, right. Yeah, I am this year, later this year, going to start purchasing some properties and, My children are involved in that. Yeah, it's lessons that I'm learning, but they're learning it right along with me.
That's right.
And, it's something that we're all doing together. And I'm sure you all have, goals and dreams for your daughters and your legacy. That's super important. And I'm always telling people that. Like, I want you to really think about leaving some sort of financial legacy, not leaving
Yep.
bills, not leaving debt, like leave something that your children would and their children would want, That's so
Yeah.
important. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's really important to be intentional about those things because it won't just happen and
No.
you can't wait until second half of life in order to begin thinking about that. It starts immediately. And so a wise person will be thinking of now and into the future and not just waiting for the future to come. So we just have to do our part when we can.
Okay, awesome. So we talked a little bit about having those healthy discussions around how to best manage money. And you had just talked about, making it something that isn't a very formal, once a month, like just kind of on a daily basis, that we're getting very comfortable with talking to each other about money. Chris had mentioned communication, which that's one of my favorite topics to talk about. Often tell people I'm an over communicator. So I tend to say the things that I'm thinking in my head because oftentimes when we don't, like we have a plan in our head or we have an idea or a thought, but if we don't verbalize it and we act on it, that's when our partner's like, well, what happened? Why did you do that? Why did you move that money from here to here? When all we have to do is just verbalize the thoughts in our head and say,
Yep.
hey, I'm thinking about moving this money from here to here. What do you think about that? That's it.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
words matter. Like I'm always telling you, words matter.
Yeah.
And
And
I get,
omission is not good.
right, right. And I get that, people say, well, 85% of our communication is nonverbal. I know, but that means we really have to make up for the other 15. We have to use words because
Yeah.
our
It shows how
person
important that 15% is because you can't
exactly.
underestimate that 15% because if you're not effective in that 15%, then your overall level of communication is less impactful.
It is. It is. So that is you're dead on with that one. People have to become comfortable with using words, having these conversations around money. And I tell people, tell me what you think, tell me what you feel. Because sometimes
Yeah.
it's a feeling. It's not a just, oh, I'm going to do this to this. I'll say, I just have this feeling that, we're like Chris said, that we're going to need to save more. I just have this feeling that we should really, hold on to what we have or move it over here. Right. So it's
Yeah.
not just about a practical reason. Sometimes it's just a feeling.
Yeah.
Look, I've never thought that delaying spending was a bad thing.
Hmm.
We've planned to
Yeah.
spend money on big things or you know uh, indulgences, and right at the moment of purchase, I was like, wait, what? Hold on. Do I really want to do this, or do I really need to do this? And so I've never felt like waiting was ever a bad thing.
Yeah. I think you'll make good decisions when you can sleep on it and give it a little bit of time to marinate. I love using that word, like let it marinate, because
Yeah.
chicken is better when you let it marinate, and so I feel like our decisions could be better if we kind of allow some of those, especially larger purchases,
But
to
that's
to
become a
marinate
best
for us.
practice for us. That's become
Yeah.
a best practice for us is that we typically will not make a large financial decision in the moment. We always say, "Okay, we'll come back to this tomorrow." And
Right.
we've been in places where we were going to make the purchase and we were like, "Okay, we think we're there, but we'll come back tomorrow."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's
Yeah.
a good
Yep.
practice, though. That's just a good, safe practice. I agree. That's a good, safe practice. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I hope people get as much value from it as I have. I just want to take the time to say thank you to Chris and Ericka Young for being on this week's episode of the podcast. Is there a product or a service that you'd like to tell my listeners about or that you'd like to promote?
Well, follow us for Better and Worth on all of the podcast streaming platforms, and on for betterandworth.com. You can get our guide for the reasons why you might not be in alignment with your partner. And it's free. It's just a way for us to get you on our newsletter, and that you can find on for betterandworth.com. And so we'd love to have you as a part of our For Better and Worth family, as well as on the Better Love movement. So we're so thankful that you've had us on here today, and we just hope that this has been a help to those who are listening.
Yeah, they can find us on all the social, Instagram, YouTube, all of those things. So For Better and Worth, or we have our corresponding Instagram pages as well.
Yep.
Okay. And I know you have a book. It's called Naked and Unashamed, 10 Money Conversations Every Couple Must Have. That's on Amazon?
It sure is. It's on Amazon, and it really is an assist, I would say, in helping to have some of the conversations that I think can be thought-provoking and help you bring you closer to your spouse as well, and really insightful for yourself. So it's broken up in your money past, your money present, and your money future. And so if you can talk about all three of them over the course of some time, you will be able to have a solid foundation for communicating well.
Okay. Well, I added that book to my list of books that I usually give to my premarital couples, but I'm also going to recommend it to my already married couples because I want them to have all the resources they can. And like I said, I've been doing the podcast for 3 years. I've never had anyone come on and talk about money, so I am long overdue because I know it is a problem or an issue in a lot of marriages or in relationships. So I thank you so much, both of you, for coming on today.
Thank you
for having us.
So if you are not subscribed to the podcast, please do so now so that you can be alerted every Monday morning when a new episode comes out on all of the streaming podcast platforms and YouTube if you want to watch the video. Please rate and review the podcast, as your ratings help me to grow and offer more free content to you. If you're watching this episode on YouTube, please do me a huge favor and subscribe, okay? Subscribe to the channel, like this video, share this video with anyone you think could benefit from it. If you have a question that you'd like to ask me directly, please send it to me at info@betterlovemovement.com. I love getting your questions. I love responding to your questions, and oftentimes I create content around your questions. So please check out my website, www.betterlovemovement.com, to get more information on love mentoring and other services that I offer. Thank you so much to everyone who listens each week. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Better Love Movement podcast. If you are not subscribed to the podcast, please do so now so that you can be alerted every Monday when a new episode comes out. Please rate and review this podcast, as your ratings help me to grow the podcast and offer more free content to you. If you are watching this episode on YouTube, please do me a huge favor and subscribe to the channel. Give this video a thumbs up and share it if it brought you value. If you have a question that you would like to have answered on the show, please send it to me at info@betterlovemovement.com. You can also reach me on my website, www.betterlovemovement.com, to get more information on love mentoring and other services offered. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, stay open to love.